They mocked Earth's primitive lasguns, until one volley vaporized their flagship. If you are not a heretic, then declare your city of origin. Leave a comment, a like, and subscribe to the Emperor's glory. At the conclusion, rate this tale from 0 to 10. The Emperor protects. The Xeno Council chamber fell silent as the holographic display showed the impossible. A human frigate, barely 300 meters long, had just vaporized the Kethtar Supremacy's flagship with a single, coordinated volley. Admiral Zephytal's serpentine form coiled tighter around his command throne, golden eyes fixed on the tactical display. The Kethtar were the galaxy's premier military force, their biomechanical vessels capable of regenerating from near-total destruction. Their flagship, the Eternal Dominance, had been a kilometer-long monument to reptilian superiority. Had been. "Replay the engagement," Zephytal hissed, his forked tongue tasting the fear pheromones of his subordinates. The hologram rewound. The human vessel, designation Emperor's Wrath, had emerged from the warp in a controlled translation that spoke of masterful navigation. Then the impossible had happened. Instead of the expected long-range probing attacks that characterized civilized warfare, the humans had done something that defied all tactical doctrine. They had charged, straight at the Kethtar battle line. No evasive maneuvers, no complex formations, no negotiations. Just a direct assault that should have been suicide. Captain Velshara, Zephytal's tactical advisor, clicked her claws nervously. "Admiral, our intelligence reports suggested human technology was primitive. Las weapons, basic armor plating, chemical propellants. How could they possibly—" "Watch," Zephytal commanded. The display showed the human frigate enduring a withering barrage of plasma fire that should have reduced it to stellar debris. Instead, the vessel's shields flared with energies that registered off the Kethtar sensor scales. But that wasn't the impossible part. The impossible part was what happened next. Every weapon on the human vessel fired simultaneously. Not the scattered volleys of conventional warfare, but a perfectly synchronized discharge that concentrated the firepower of dozens of laser batteries into a single, focused point on the flagship's hull. The Eternal Dominance simply ceased to exist. "Impossible," breathed Commander Rixath from his position at the sensor station. "Our bioarmor can regenerate from anything short of a stellar collision. No energy weapon in the galaxy can deliver that level of concentrated power." Zephytal's eyes narrowed. The humans had done more than destroy a vessel. They had shattered the Kethtar understanding of warfare itself. For 3 millennia, the reptilian empire had expanded through calculated aggression, overwhelming inferior species with superior technology and tactics. They had never encountered an enemy that could match their biomechanical vessels, until now. "Open communications with the human vessel," Zephytal ordered. The holographic display shifted to show the bridge of the Emperor's Wrath. What Zephytal saw there chilled his cold-blooded heart. The humans were singing, not the victory songs he might have expected, but something deeper, more primal. The bridge crew, wearing what appeared to be primitive flak armor and carrying weapons that looked like museum pieces, were chanting in perfect unison. Their leader, a female in ornate power armor decorated with religious iconography, raised a chainsword that roared with mechanical fury. "Blessed are they who serve the Emperor's will," she intoned, her voice carrying the weight of absolute conviction. "For in his name we bring fire and redemption to the Xenos threat." Behind her, a massive individual in Terminator armor stepped into view. Even through the holographic display, Zephytal could sense the raw menace radiating from the figure. The helmet design was unmistakably predatory, decorated with purity seals and honor markings that spoke of countless victories. "Sister Superior Celestine," the Terminator's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "The Kethtar fleet maintains formation. Your orders?" The woman's smile was the most terrifying thing Zephytal had ever seen. It held no mercy, no doubt, only the absolute certainty of a predator that had found its prey. "The Emperor's will is clear, Brother Sergeant Cassius. These Xenos dare to threaten Imperial space with their presence." She raised her bolt pistol, its muzzle bearing inscriptions that seemed to writhe in the display's light. "Purge them all!" The transmission cut. Zephytal stared at the empty display, his mind struggling to process what he had witnessed. The humans had just declared war on the most powerful military force in 3 sectors with the casual certainty of someone discussing the weather. "Admiral," Velshara's voice cracked slightly. "Their vessel is moving again." The tactical display showed the Emperor's Wrath turning toward the Kethtar formation, but instead of maintaining engagement range, it was accelerating directly toward them. Again. "They cannot be serious," Rixath whispered. "Our battle line includes 12 dreadnoughts and 40 escort vessels. They are alone." Zeftal watched the human vessel approach with the inexorable certainty of a natural disaster. Every tactical algorithm in his enhanced brain screamed that this was impossible. No single vessel, regardless of technology, could engage a full Kethtar battle fleet and expect to survive. The humans did not seem to have received this message. "All vessels," Zeftal commanded, his voice carrying across the fleet communications network, "concentrate fire on the human vessel. Target their propulsion systems first, then weapons. I want them alive for interrogation." The combined firepower of the Kethtar fleet lanced out toward the Emperor's Wrath. Plasma cannons that could melt asteroids, particle beams capable of boring through planetary crusts, bioacid projectors that could dissolve armor at the molecular level. The human vessel flew through it all as if it were a gentle rain. "Impossible," Velshara breathed. "No shields can withstand that level of concentrated fire." But Zeftal was beginning to understand. The humans weren't relying solely on technology. There was something else, something that didn't register on sensors but was somehow more real than the metal and energy surrounding them. Faith. The realization hit him like a physical blow. These humans believed, with a conviction that transcended mere tactical analysis, that their victory was not just possible, but inevitable. Their entire approach to warfare was built on a foundation of absolute certainty that their cause was righteous and their enemies were already defeated. It was the most illogical, unscientific, primitive approach to combat that Zeftal had ever encountered. It was also terrifyingly effective. The Emperor's Wrath reached optimal firing range and unleashed hell. This time, Zeftal watched carefully as the human weapons fired. Each last cannon blast was accompanied by what appeared to be ritual gestures from the crew. The weapon batteries themselves bore religious inscriptions that glowed with their own inner light. The humans had somehow weaponized their faith. 3 more Kethtar vessels simply vanished, their biomechanical hulls offering no more resistance than tissue paper against the concentrated fury of Imperial firepower guided by unwavering belief. "Admiral," Rixath's voice was barely a whisper, "we are receiving multiple warp signatures, large ones." Zeftal's blood turned to ice as the sensor readings populated his display. 12 more human vessels were translating from warp space, each one broadcasting the same impossible energy signatures as the Emperor's Wrath. But that wasn't what terrified him. What terrified him was the sound now filling the communications channels, a sound that would haunt his nightmares for the rest of his significantly shortened life. The humans were still singing. Captain Vex Thanor's mandibles clicked nervously as he reviewed the tactical display aboard the Swarm's Destiny. The Ketherian fleet, his people's proud collection of bioengineered vessels, floated in formation around the mining asteroid of Kepler 442b, their chitinous hulls gleaming under the system's binary suns. "Status report," he buzzed to his communications officer, a smaller Ketherian whose wings twitched with anxiety. "The reptilian hegemony fleet maintains position at the system's edge, Captain. 47 vessels confirmed. Their leader, Commodore Susthak, continues to demand our immediate withdrawal from what they claim is hegemony territory." Vex Thanor's compound eyes shifted across the holographic display. His people had discovered this mineral-rich asteroid first, had already begun extraction operations. The rare Earth elements here could power Ketherian bioships for generations, but the reptilians, with their cold calculating minds and superior technology, had arrived 3 days later with overwhelming force. "Any word from the Tau negotiation envoy?" Vex Thanor asked hopefully. "Ambassador, Porel Kauyon reports the talks have stalled. The reptilians refuse to acknowledge our territorial claims under any galactic accords. They offer only 2 choices, immediate evacuation or annihilation." A chill ran through Vex Thanor's exoskeleton. The reptilians were notorious for their ruthless efficiency. When they said annihilation, they meant complete orbital sterilization. Every Ketherian on the asteroid and in the fleet would be reduced to cosmic dust. "Captain," his sensor operator called out, wings vibrating with excitement, detecting multiple warp signatures approaching the system. Unknown configuration, but the energy readings are unusual. Vexthanor scuttled to the sensor station. On the screen, ghostly afterimages flickered as ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The vessels that materialized were unlike anything in the known galactic databases, massive Gothic structures that seemed to blend cathedral architecture with military engineering. Golden eagles and skull motifs adorned hulls that stretched for kilometers. "By the Great Hive," whispered the sensor operator, "there are dozens of them." The lead vessel was truly massive, easily 3 times the size of the largest Cytherian bioship. Its hull bore the weathered scars of countless battles, and along its flanks, weapon batteries that could level continents remained ominously silent. "Incoming transmission," announced the communications officer. "Universal." Translation protocols engaged. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a figure that made every Cytherian on the bridge freeze in instinctive fear. The being was tall and broad-shouldered, encased in power armor that seemed forged from nightmares. A skull-faced helmet concealed its features, and a flowing red cloak bore golden insignias. When it spoke, its voice carried the absolute authority of someone accustomed to instant obedience. "I am Captain General Marcus Aurelius of the Adeptus Custodes, speaking for His Most Holy Majesty, the Emperor of Mankind. By what authority do Xenos dare disturb imperial space?" Vexthanor's translator struggled with several of the human terms. Imperial space made little sense. Their star charts showed no human territorial claims in this region. He clicked his response carefully. "Honored being, I am Captain Vexthanor of the Cytherian Collective. This system was unclaimed when our survey teams arrived. We seek only to extract resources necessary for our people's survival." The human's helmet turned slightly, and Vexthanor felt exposed under that faceless gaze. "Survival," the Captain General repeated, his tone unreadable. "How many souls? Excuse me. How many of your kind live on that rock?" "Approximately 40,000 Cytherians operate the mining facilities, with another 12,000 supporting personnel." For a moment, the transmission was silent. Then another voice cut in, younger, but carrying fierce conviction. The screen split to show a figure in different armor, pure white ceramite plate marked with the symbol of a red cross. This one's helmet was removed, revealing a human face that was both beautiful and terrible, framed by hair that had been ritually scarred. "I am Sister Superior Celestine of the Order of the Sacred Rose, Adeptus Sororitas. Captain General, these Xenos face extinction at the hands of the reptilian slavers. The Emperor's mercy extends to all who suffer under tyranny." "Sister," the Captain General's voice carried a warning note. "Our mission parameters. Our mission is to serve the Emperor's will, and the Emperor protects the innocent, human or otherwise." Celestine's eyes, bright blue and filled with unshakable faith, turned to Vexthanor. "How long until the reptilians attack?" Vexthanor's mandibles clicked in confusion. These humans spoke of their Emperor as if he were a living god, and they clearly held some kind of internal disagreement. Yet both radiated a dangerous competence that made his chitin crawl. "Our estimates suggest they will move within 6 hours. They await only the arrival of their siege-class vessels." Across the system, Commodore Sistak was having his own moment of confusion. The cold-blooded reptilian studied the human fleet through slitted eyes, his forked tongue tasting the recycled air of his command bridge. "Analysis," he hissed to his tactical officer. "Unknown. Technology, Commodore. Their vessels appear primitive in some ways. We detect crude chemically propelled projectile weapons rather than proper energy cannons. Yet their fleet displacement suggests considerable mass, and there are energy readings we cannot classify." Sistak's scaly lips peeled back in what might have been a smile. "Primitives with kinetic weapons? Against hegemony shields." He turned to his communications specialist. "Open a channel to these humans." The transmission established, Sistak found himself facing the same helmeted figure that had addressed the Cytherians. The reptilian drew himself up to his full height, using his species' natural intimidation tactics. "I am Commodore Sistak of the Reptilian Hegemony 4th Fleet. You trespass in hegemony space. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." The human's response was immediate and delivered without emotion. "This system is hereby claimed for the Imperium of Man. Withdraw your Forces or face the Emperor's judgment? Sesthak's eyes narrowed. The creature's audacity was almost amusing. You dare threaten the hegemony with your primitive vessels? Our shields can deflect antimatter warheads. Your crude bullets will accomplish nothing. There was a pause, then something deeply unsettling happened. The human tilted its head slightly, and Sesthak could swear he heard the sound of laughter, cold, humorless laughter, through the transmission. Crude bullets? The human repeated. Yes, we are quite fond of our crude bullets. The transmission cut. Aboard the swarm's destiny, Vexthanor watched in fascination and terror as the human fleet began to move. Their formation was unlike anything he had studied in military academies, too precise, too disciplined, and somehow too eager. The massive ships advanced with the inexorable patience of predators who knew their prey could not escape. Captain, his communications officer buzzed urgently. The humans are broadcasting on all frequencies. It's some kind of chant. The bridge speakers crackled to life, and what emerged made every Cytherian instinctively huddle closer together. Thousands of human voices, raised in perfect unison, singing words their translators could barely process. Emperor, protect us from the alien, the mutant, the heretic. Grant us strength to purge the unclean. In your name, we bring death to your enemies, for only in death does duty end. Sister, Celestine's voice cut through the hymn. Cytherian's vessels withdraw to minimum safe distance. What you are about to witness is not for the weak of spirit. Vexthanor didn't need to be told twice. As his bioships pulled back, he watched the human fleet complete its approach. The reptilian vessels, sleek and deadly, had activated their shields, shimmering barriers that could deflect energy weapons and absorb kinetic impacts with ease. All vessels, came Captain General Aurelius's voice across the human fleet. Weapons free, for the Emperor. For the Emperor! The response from thousands of human throats made the void itself seem to tremble. Then the humans opened fire. What happened next would be seared into Vexthanor's memory for the rest of his life. The human ships didn't fire elegant energy beams or sleek missiles. Instead, they unleashed something far more terrifying. Walls of solid metal traveling at significant fractions of the speed of light. The primitive kinetic weapons, macro cannons, lance batteries, and nova cannons, struck the reptilian shields with the fury of falling stars. But instead of dissipating harmlessly, something impossible occurred. The shields, designed to deflect energy and absorb momentum, simply failed. Sesthak watched in growing horror as his flagship's shields crumpled under the barrage. The kinetic rounds punched through multiple layers of defense as if they were tissue paper, their impacts causing secondary explosions throughout his vessel. How? He hissed. Analysis! How are they penetrating our defenses? His tactical officer's voice was tight with disbelief. Commodore, the projectiles aren't just kinetic rounds. They're consecrated. Our sensors detect some kind of energy field surrounding each projectile, unlike any technology in our databases. Across the human fleet, gun crews worked with practiced efficiency, loading shells that bore blessings etched in high Gothic, ammunition that had been sanctified in the name of the Emperor. In the Imperium, faith was a weapon as real as adamantium and promethium. The reptilian formation began to crumble. Vessels that had seemed untouchable moments before listed helplessly as their hulls were systematically shredded. But Sesthak was not ready to concede defeat. With cold reptilian logic, he ordered his remaining ships to target the human flagship. Plasma beams and antimatter warheads streaked toward the massive cathedral ship. For a moment, Vexthanor thought he might witness the humans' destruction. Then the incoming fire struck the human vessel's void shields, and something even more impossible occurred. The ship's shields didn't just deflect the attacks, they seemed to absorb them, growing brighter and more solid with each impact. Golden light played across the hull, and Vexthanor's sensors detected energy readings that defied physics. Impossible, breathed his sensor operator. Captain, their defensive systems are actually being strengthened by enemy fire. How is this possible? The answer came from Sister Celestine's calm voice across the comm. Faith, Xenos. The Emperor protects those who serve him truly. The human counterattack was devastating. Torpedo salvos that moved like living things hunted down fleeing reptilian vessels, their machine spirits guided by targeting prayers. Bomber wings launched from the human carriers, their pilots singing hymns as they dove into suicide runs that would have horrified any sane military doctrine. One young human pilot's voice cut through the tactical chatter. "This is Fury Wing Leader. Shields down on the enemy flagship. Beginning bombing run. For the Emperor and the blessed Saint Celestine." Vexthanor watched the small human fighters dive toward Sistak's massive command vessel, taking withering defensive fire. Half the squadron was vaporized in the approach, but the survivors pressed on with suicidal determination. Their bombs struck the reptilian flagship's critical systems, and the great vessel began to list. In desperation, Sistak opened a channel to the human fleet. "Enough! We withdraw! This system is yours!" Captain General Aurelius's response was immediate and terrifying. "Too late. You threatened Imperial citizens. There is only one penalty for such heresy." "Imperial citizens? The insects? They're not even your species. They are under our protection now. Prepare for judgment." The human flagship's main guns, massive Nova cannons the size of city blocks, swiveled toward the crippled reptilian vessel. When they fired, the universe briefly held its breath. The projectiles that emerged were more than mere shells. They were manifestations of the Emperor's wrath, guided by prayers and blessed by faith. They struck Sistak's flagship with the force of small suns, and the great vessel simply ceased to exist, vaporized in a flash of holy light. The surviving reptilian ships needed no further encouragement. They jumped to warp speed with desperate haste, abandoning their fallen comrades and their territorial claims. As the silence of victory settled over the system, Vexthanor found himself struggling to process what he had witnessed. These humans fought with primitive weapons, yet achieved impossible results. They spoke of faith as if it were technology, and somehow made it work. Sister Celestine's voice came across the comm. "Gentle now. Captain Vexthanor, you and your people are safe. The Imperium protects. I don't understand. Why? Why did you help us?" "Because it was right. The Emperor teaches that the strong must protect the weak, that mercy is not weakness, but strength." Captain General Aurelius's voice added more pragmatically, "Also, you mine rare earth elements we require for our Geller field generators. A mutually beneficial arrangement can be reached." Vexthanor's translator struggled. With Geller field, but the meaning was clear enough. As his bioships approached the human fleet for formal negotiations, he couldn't shake one disturbing thought. If these humans considered themselves the protectors of the weak, what did that make them when they chose to be enemies? The thought would haunt him for cycles to come, especially as reports filtered in from across the galaxy of what happened when the Imperium of Man went to war in earnest. But that was a lesson for another day. For now, the Cytherian collective had found both salvation and something far more complex. They had encountered humanity, and nothing would ever be the same. The Kethvar coalition had gathered every available ship in their sector. Admiral Zethkara stood on the bridge of the flagship Stellar Harmony, watching through the viewscreen as hundreds of vessels assembled. Sleek Eldari cruisers hung beside bulky Tau destroyers, while the smaller craft of a dozen different species formed defensive screens around the larger ships. "Impressive fleet," muttered Commander Shasui Mien of the Tau forces. "The reptilian Sec Thresh will not expect such unity among the younger races." Captain Falshia of the Eldari contingent remained skeptical. Unity built on desperation is fragile. When the humans arrive with their primitive vessels, this alliance may shatter from embarrassment alone. Through the comm channels, nervous chatter filled the void. The Kethavar had shared intelligence about humanity's weapons, crude laser technology, projectile firearms, and something called Lasguns that their databases indicated were centuries behind current galactic standards. Many captains questioned whether these Imperial Guard forces would prove more liability than asset. "Energy signatures detected," announced the sensor officer, a nervous Tau named Shasla Oris. Multiple vessels emerging from warp translation. The first human ship materialized with a thunderous roar that somehow transmitted through space itself. Where Eldari vessels emerged like dancers and Tau craft appeared with mathematical precision, the Imperial Navy ships tore reality apart with brute force. The massive Gothic architecture of their hulls bristled with weapon batteries, cathedral spires, and golden eagles that caught starlight like religious icons. By the ethereals, whispered Commander Mien. "Those ships are enormous." The lead vessel, a massive battle cruiser, nearly 3 kilometers long, dominated the formation. Its vox crackled to life with a voice that seemed carved from granite and blessed by divine authority. "This is Admiral Mordian Kane of His Divine Majesty's Navy. Battle Fleet Gothic responds to your distress call. The Emperor protects." Admiral Zethkara activated the fleet-wide communications. "Admiral Kane, we are grateful for your response. However, our intelligence suggests your weapons technology may be insufficient against Sekthresh shielding systems." A sound emerged from the human channel that the universal translators struggled to interpret. Admiral Kane was laughing. "Insufficient? Mon-Ki, forgive me. Xenos allies, observe our forward batteries. See those macro cannons? Each shell weighs several tons and moves at significant fractions of light speed. Our lance batteries focus stellar energy into coherent beams. As for our primitive lasguns," another laugh. This one somehow darker. "You will understand soon enough." Captain Falshia's elegant features twisted into a frown. "Admiral, with respect, our enemies possess adaptive shielding technology. Energy weapons of your level cannot penetrate their defenses." "Captain, with respect," Admiral Kane's voice carried the weight of 10,000 years of warfare. "The Imperial Guard has been killing the enemies of mankind since before your species discovered fire. We know what we're about." Alarm klaxons suddenly screamed across every ship in the fleet. The Sekthresh had arrived. Emerging from fold space came a sight that had haunted the nightmares of a dozen species. Sekthresh vessels moved like liquid metal, their hulls shifting and adapting in real time. Each ship was a masterpiece of predatory engineering, designed to inspire terror as much as deliver death. Their adaptive shields shimmered with stolen energy from previous victories. "Fleet analysis complete," reported a Kethvar technician. Sekthresh formation consists of 12 heavy cruisers, 4 dreadnoughts, and their flagship Apex Predator. Combined firepower exceeds our maximum defensive capabilities by 300%. The enemy flagship was a monster of biomechanical engineering, its hull writhing with organic components that pulsed with malevolent intelligence. Weapon ports opened like hungry mouths along its length, each one capable of ending lesser civilizations. "All ships evasive patterns," Admiral Zethkara commanded. "Do not allow them to achieve weapon locks." The Eldari moved with impossible grace, their holofields making targeting nearly impossible. Tau vessels maintained perfect formation, while their shield drones deployed in complex patterns. The Kethvar and their allies scattered according to practiced doctrine, presenting no easy targets. Only the human ships held their position in perfect battle line. "Admiral Kane," Captain Falshia called urgently. "You must disperse. Their targeting systems will achieve locks within moments." "Negative. Imperial doctrine is clear. We hold the line." Admiral Kane's voice carried absolute certainty. "All ships load macro cannons with blessed shells. Lance batteries to full charge. Guard formations prepare for close assault." The Sekthresh flagship fired first, its primary weapon painting space with energies that defied classification. The beam struck the lead human, battle cruiser directly in the prow, energies that should have vaporized any known material. The Gothic ship's void shields flared, collapsed, and reformed. The massive vessel shuddered, but held position. "Impossible," whispered Commander Mien. "No ship that primitive should survive a direct hit from Apex weapons." Admiral Kane's voice carried grim satisfaction. "The Emperor protects. All ships return fire." What followed redefined the Coalition's understanding of primitive warfare. Human macro cannons spoke with voices like angry gods, hurling shells the size of buildings across space. Each projectile was a work of art and faith, blessed by Mechanicus priests and inscribed with litanies of destruction. They struck Sekthresh shields, not with sophisticated energy manipulation, but with overwhelming kinetic force. The adaptive shields, designed to deflect and absorb energy weapons, struggled to compensate for solid matter, moving at relativistic speeds. Several smaller Sekthresh vessels simply disappeared, their shields overloaded by the sheer brutality of human gunnery. "Now you begin to understand," Admiral Kane observed calmly. "When in doubt, apply more force." Lance batteries added their own argument to the discussion. Unlike the precision energy weapons favored by other races, human lances focused raw stellar fury into beams that didn't so much penetrate shields as ignore them entirely. Several Sekthresh cruisers began venting atmosphere and secondary explosions, but the real shock came when transport craft began launching from human vessels. "Admiral," Captain Falshia called urgently, "you're deploying troops. This is void combat, not planetary assault." "The Imperial Guard goes where the Emperor commands," Admiral Kane replied matter-of-factly. "Boarding torpedoes away. For the Emperor." Hundreds of armored projectiles streaked towards Sekthresh vessels. Each torpedo contained a squad of Imperial Guardsmen armed with what the Alliance database dismissed as primitive laser weapons. The Coalition watched in horrified fascination as these crude missiles punched through adaptive hulls through the simple expedient of not caring about sophisticated defensive measures. The first boarding action began aboard a Sekthresh heavy cruiser. Coalition sensors picked up internal combat signatures, but the readings made no sense. Human energy weapons, supposedly centuries behind galactic standards, were somehow cutting through Sekthresh battle armor like it was paper. "Those are Lasguns," Admiral Kane explained helpfully. "Standard Imperial Guard equipment for 10 millennia. Simple, reliable, and absolutely lethal to anything without proper protection." "But our analysis showed," Commander Mayen began. "Your analysis showed energy output equivalent to mining tools," Admiral Kane interrupted. "What it didn't account for was focus, reliability, and the fact that a lasgun never jams, never runs out of ammunition on extended campaigns, and can punch holes through most known armor materials when properly maintained." On screen, the Sekthresh cruiser began listing as internal explosions rippled through its structure. The reptilian crew, masters of adaptation and technological superiority, had never encountered enemies who simply ignored their advantages through sheer bloody-minded persistence. "Imperial Guard formations advance," Admiral Kane commanded. "Show these Xenos how real soldiers fight." More boarding torpedoes launched, and the pattern repeated itself across multiple Sekthresh vessels. Human soldiers, equipped with gear that should have been laughably obsolete, systematically dismantled ships designed to be technologically superior. Their tactics were simple, direct, and utterly ruthless. A new voice crackled across Imperial channels, harsh with authority and zealous conviction. "This is Commissar Vex. First, a salt wave has secured enemy engineering sections, beginning purification protocols. The Emperor's justice will not be denied." Captain Falshia watched her tactical displays with growing unease. Human boarding parties weren't just capturing Sekthresh vessels. They were executing systematic genocide aboard each ship they entered. No prisoners, no interrogation, just methodical extermination. "Admiral Kane," she called urgently, "your forces are killing everyone aboard those ships. We need prisoners for intelligence gathering." "Negative." Admiral Kane's response carried the weight of absolute conviction. "The enemies of mankind deserve no mercy. Commissar Vex, continue purification. Leave none alive." The brutality of human warfare began to dawn on the Coalition forces. These weren't soldiers following rules of civilized combat. They were fanatics, prosecuting a holy war with weapons and tactics refined over 10,000 years of constant conflict. "Sekthresh. Flagship is moving," announced the sensor officer. "The apex predator is targeting our formation directly." The massive enemy dreadnought turned toward the human battle line with predatory grace. Its primary weapons began charging with energies that made space itself writhe in protest. This was a vessel designed to crack planets, now focusing its full attention on Admiral Kane's battlecruiser. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," Admiral Zethkara commanded. "That weapon will destroy anything it targets." Once again, the Imperial Navy held position. "Admiral Kane, you must retreat. No ship can survive that firepower," Captain Falshia called desperately. Admiral Kane's response sent chills through every alien heart listening. "We are Imperial Navy. We do not retreat. We do not surrender. If we die in service to the Emperor." A pause, then, "All power to forward shields. Prepare ramming speed." "Ramming speed?" Commander Mien's voice cracked with disbelief. "You're going to ram a dreadnought. If necessary. The Emperor protects." The apex predator fired. Raw destruction lanced across space in a beam that should have ended the argument permanently. It struck Admiral Kane's battlecruiser with enough force to sterilize continents. Human void shields collapsed instantly. The massive Gothic prow glowed white-hot as armor plating vaporized. Whole sections of the ship simply disappeared, and the battlecruiser kept coming. Damage. "Report," Admiral Kane barked. "Forward shields down, prow armor compromised, casualties in sections 7 through 12, came the professional response. "We remain combat effective." Captain Falshia stared at her sensors in absolute shock. By every law of physics and military engineering, that human ship should have been debris. Instead, it was accelerating toward the enemy flagship with obvious intent to ram. "Impossible," she whispered. "Nothing built with primitive technology could survive that attack." Admiral Kane's voice carried grim satisfaction. "Captain, you still don't understand. This ship wasn't built with primitive technology. It was built with faith." The siege of Vega Prime had reached its final hour. Commander Vextar of the Catharian Defense Fleet watched in horror as the last of his cruisers exploded in brilliant orange flames, torn apart by reptilian plasma cannons. The Saurian Empire's massive dreadnought dominated the orbital battlefield. Like a predatory beast, its sleek scales reflecting the dying light of burning ships. "Sir, they're demanding our surrender again," reported Communications Officer Lyra, her feline ears flat against her skull in terror. The Catharians had fought bravely, but their enemy's technology was centuries ahead of their own. "Never," Vextar growled through his lupine muzzle. "We die before we bow to—" "Unknown vessel approaching from hyperspace, Commander," interrupted Navigation Officer Tusk. His massive bovine frame hunched over sensors. "Configuration. I've never seen anything like it." The viewscreen flickered as a new ship materialized from the warp. It was grotesque by galactic standards, angular, covered in Gothic spires and skulls, with massive cannon batteries jutting from its hull like the ribs of some ancient leviathan. Imperial Gothic script blazed across its sides in High Gothic. "Emperor's Wrath. What in the galaxy is that monstrosity?" whispered Lyra. The Saurian Admiral's voice crackled across all frequencies, dripping with reptilian disdain. "Pathetic mammals, you bring more prey to feed our—" "This is Captain Mordian of His Divine Majesty's Imperial Navy," a gravelly human voice interrupted, cutting through the Saurian transmission like a chainsword through flesh. "Stand down or be purged in the Emperor's name." The bridge fell silent. Vextar had heard whispers of humans, these strange bipedal death-worlders from the far rim, but had never encountered them personally. "Captain Mordian," Vextar activated his communicator. "This is Commander Vextar of the Catharian Defense Fleet. We appreciate your arrival, but you're facing a Saurian dreadnought. Their plasma technology can—" "Negative. We have assessed the threat. Purification commencing in the Emperor's name." The Saurian Admiral's laughter echoed across the void. "Human primitives. Your ship is barely larger than our escort frigates. Surrender now, and we might preserve you for—" "The Emperor protects Xenos scum." What happened next defied every law of tactical warfare the galaxy had ever known. The human vessel, impossibly small compared to the Saurian dreadnought, charged directly at the enemy flagship. Not flanking, not seeking cover, not employing any sensible battle doctrine. A straight, suicidal charge while loudspeakers across the ship blared what could only be described as religious war hymns. "They're insane," breathed Tusk. "That's tactical suicide." The Saurian dreadnought's plasma batteries opened fire, unleashing devastating salvos that had previously vaporized Catharian cruisers in single shots. The human ship should have been obliterated instantly. Instead, something impossible happened. Shimmering energy fields, crackling with strange electricity, absorbed the plasma strikes. But these weren't ordinary void shields. They seemed to strengthen under fire, glowing brighter with each impact, while the humans' chanting grew louder. "Faith is our shield. The Emperor's light guides us." "They're defensive systems," Lyra stammered, checking her readings 3 times. "They're getting stronger under fire. How is that even possible?" "Distance closing. Lance batteries charging. For the throne of terror." The human ship closed to point-blank range, so close that the Saurian Admiral's arrogance finally cracked into concern. Massive weapon arrays, each larger than a Catharian destroyer, swiveled to track the dreadnought. "Fire for the Emperor. Purge the Xenos." The lance batteries fired as one. not the elegant plasma of advanced civilizations or the particle beams of sophisticated warfare. Raw, primitive, brutal laser energy, but concentrated to an impossible degree. The beams didn't just strike the Saurian dreadnought, they carved through its advanced armor like it was paper. "Impossible!" the Saurian admiral shrieked. "Our quantum-reinforced plating should—" The Emperor's light burns away all falsehood. Secondary explosions rippled along the dreadnought's hull as critical systems overloaded. But the humans weren't finished. Launch bays opened along the Emperor's wrath, disgorging wave after wave of small craft that moved like angry hornets. "Boarding torpedoes," Vextar realized. "They're attempting to board a ship 50 times larger than theirs." The Catharian crew watched in stunned silence as the torpedoes smashed through the dreadnought's hull, their armored tips punching through advanced alloys like bullets through cloth. Then came the sounds, horrible rhythmic chanting echoing across communication frequencies. "Death to the enemies of mankind! For the Emperor!" The Saurian admiral's panic was audible now. "Security teams to breach points, repel the boarders. How many are—" His transmission cut to screams, then silence, then another human voice. "Bridge secured. Enemy command structure eliminated. Vessel claimed for the High. Imperium!" In less than 20 minutes, a ship carrying perhaps 200 humans had captured a dreadnought with a crew of 50,000 Saurians. The implications shattered every military doctrine in the galaxy. Captain Mordian's voice crackled across communications to the Catharian fleet. "Allied vessels. This is Captain Mordian, threat neutralized. The Emperor has granted victory this day." Vextar found his voice after several attempts. "Captain, how did your people—" "What just happened defies every law of warfare." "Simple, Commander. We serve the immortal Emperor of mankind. The enemy did not. The mathematics of faith are not complex." A shuttle launched from the captured dreadnought, heading for Vextar's flagship. When the airlock cycled open, the Catharian crew got their first close look at humans. Captain Mordian stood 2 meters tall, encased in ornate power armor, covered in purity seals and scripture. Half his face was mechanical, replaced after some previous battle, while a bionic eye glowed red in the dim light. Behind him marched soldiers in flak armor and gas masks, carrying weapons that looked primitive but radiated menace. "Commander Vextar." Mordian's voice was surprisingly calm without the vox amplification. "Your people fought with honor. The Emperor smiles upon such courage. Captain, I must understand. Your weapons, your tactics. How did you accomplish the impossible?" Mordian's scarred face might have been smiling beneath the machinery. "What you call impossible, we call Tuesday. Humanity has fought wars like this for 10,000 years. When facing extinction, you discover what you're truly capable of." Lyra stepped forward nervously. "Sir, your boarding teams, 200 soldiers against 50,000 defenders. Sister, you misunderstand our nature." One of the soldiers spoke, removing his helmet to reveal a young face marked by burn scars. "We are not soldiers. We are the Emperors. Faithful. Death is simply another form of service." Tusk shook his massive head. "But the mathematical impossibility—" "Mathematics." Mordian's mechanical eye whirred as it focused. "Your error is assuming logic governs warfare. Faith governs warfare. Will governs warfare. The Emperor grants victory to those who deserve it, and we have earned our place through 10 millennia of righteous battle." The communications console chimed. Reports were flooding in from across the system. More Saurian forces were arriving. Entire fleets that would normally require a full galactic alliance to oppose. "Captain," Vextar said grimly, "we've won this battle, but they're bringing reinforcements. My people should evacuate while—" "Negative." Mordian's voice hardened to adamantine. "The Emperor's servants do not retreat. We advance until victory or death. Sir, with respect, there are millions of enemy ships incoming." Mordian activated his voxcaster. "All Imperial vessels. This is Captain Mordian. Enemy reinforcements detected. Status report." The response came from across the system as dozens of Imperial ships dropped from the warp. Each one was a Gothic nightmare of spires and weapon batteries, and each one replied with the same fanatical fervor. "Emperor's sword reporting, ready to serve. Righteous fury standing by for the throne. Blessed retribution awaiting orders. Death to the enemies of mankind." Vextar's sensors registered the impossible. The human fleet was outnumbered 1,000 to 1, facing technology centuries more advanced, with enemy reinforcements that could glass entire worlds. "Captain, surely even you can see." "Commander Vextar," Mordian's voice carried absolute certainty. "Today, you will witness why humanity has endured every horror the galaxy can produce. Today, you will understand why we are called the Emperor's finest." The human fleet moved as one, not seeking advantageous positions or defensive formations, but charging straight into the heart of the Saurian armada, while battle hymns echoed across every frequency. "They're not fighting a battle," whispered Lyra, watching the tactical display. "They're conducting a religious ceremony. And the galaxy," Vextar realized with dawning comprehension, "has been underestimating them for 10,000 years. The Battle of Vega Prime entered galactic legend that day, not for its strategic importance, but for the moment when every civilized species learned the truth about humanity. They weren't just another member of the galactic community, they were apex predators who had learned to worship war itself, and they called it faith.
Angels fall.